Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Real Talk in the Shop. This week, I want to talk about the Bassmaster Central Open in Smith Lake. I just got back today and had a good tournament there. You know, not as good as I had hoped for, but a dang good tournament. Top 15. I finished 14th place at Smith Lake. So I want to talk about a little bit of my history on Smith Lake, what I like to look for there. We'll talk about some early fall fishing. I've got the exact baits. I hadn't even cut them off my rods yet. I just pulled them out of the rod locker. We're going to talk about them as I used them in the tournament, how it all progressed for me, how it all came together, what I think I did wrong. So let's jump right into it. To give you some of my history on Smith Lake, I actually cashed my first check in a Bassmaster event on Smith Lake in the fall of 2012. So Smith's always, I always think about that every time I go back there. It's just kind of a cool little sentimental deal, I guess. But first time I ever fished a BSS event there, finished in the 30s, I think, something like that. Had a decent finish, and then I've had a couple of top 10s there in the opens, 2 or 3, I can't remember. But Smith Lake has always been really good to me. It really has. And I think the reason why, you guys know I grew up fishing Timms Ford Lake, a lot of the Normandy Lake, a lot of these lakes here in the southern middle Tennessee area kind of set up a lot similar to Smith Lake because it's a rocky impoundment, got a lot of rock bluffs, it's got a lot of long flat points, got a lot of gravel, got a lot of chunk rock, it's got a lot of creek arms and different areas. And oddly enough, every time I've ever been to Smith Lake, it's not like I found a really, really good area. Every time I've been, I've always caught them in a different part of the lake, doing something just a little bit different. So that's kind of cool as well. But going into this event, I knew 10 to 12 pounds a day would be a really good bag. They had a huge tournament there, like a 230 boat local tournament the weekend before we were there. Only took 15 pounds to win it. That's 2-man teams. That's a two-man team tournament, taking 15 pounds to win 230 boats. So obviously the fishing is pretty dang tough. And on top of all of that, sometimes when we go to Smith, we get a 12-inch limit exemption because Smith actually has a slot limit on the lake. This time it had to be a 15-inch fish before we could keep it. So a limit of keepers every day I knew was going to be, it would get you a long way. So I started practicing basically a week before the tournament. I stayed with a good friend of mine, Tim Arnold, who I met through the Bassmaster Opens. He was my co-angler in 2014 there, maybe, something like that. But anyway, I stayed at his house. I started practicing the Saturday prior to the tournament. Just went out, just kind of getting a feel, because I hadn't been to Smith Lake since like January, back in the winter. So just kind of wanted to get a feel for what was going on the lake, what area of the lake. I like to look at each arm. You've got the Ryan Creek arm, you got the Rock Creek arm, White Oak Creek, Crooked Creek, you got the Sipsey River arm, Brushy Creek. There's so much to cover. And the way I like to fish in the fall, I like to find an area. And that's the way I like to fish a lake like Smith that's real sprawly and spread out. I like to find me an area, kind of home in on that area, and that's how I like to do it. And that's how I did it this week. First day of the tournament, had a pretty good day. I caught 11 pounds, 7 ounces the first day. I'm sitting in 13th place. The top 10, the way the opens work, the top 10 get to fish the third and final day. It's a 3-day tournament. And I barely missed that top 10. The second day I had a limit for 8.5 pounds. I just never ran into a big bite all day. And I knew all day long, I was like, man, I'm one bite away. I'm one bite away. And I just never could find that big bite on the second day. And I missed the top 10 by less than a pound. So that kind of stinks. But let's talk about baits real quick, because I feel like these 3 baits you can take anywhere across the country in the fall, especially across the south, the southeast, I'll say that. Maybe not up north, but across the southeast, you can take these 3 baits in the fall and they'll get you out of a bad situation if you're struggling to get bites. First of all, let's talk about my buzzbait setup. You guys know I've done a couple videos on buzzbait fishing. I love buzzbait fishing in the fall, and it's a good way to cover a bunch of water. I covered a ton of water with it in practice. I found an area of the lake up one of the arms that I really felt like one day of practice I could have had a really good bag, maybe even an upper teens bag on a buzzbait. But during practice we had pre-frontal conditions, we had a big rain event, and during the tournament we were fishing post-front conditions. The first day I did most of my damage on a buzzbait. That's the Accent buzzbait, 5/16 ounce. I was putting a toad on the back of it. I had two different ones rigged up. I had a shad colored one like this, and then I had a bluegill color one tied up. And I caught some on both of them. That's what I caught majority of my weight on when I had the 11 pound 7 ounces the first day. I was throwing it on 20 pound vicious 100% fluorocarbon. I go back and forth on this. I know in the video I did not long ago, I was talking about throwing your buzzbait on braid, 40 pound or 30 pound vicious no fade braid. I go back and forth on it. Since the water is so clear at Smith, I like throwing it on fluorocarbon, and it's probably all in my mind because I know they can't see the braid. But if you're fishing for sort of finicky fish, you will land more fish on fluorocarbon. If they get any slack in the line whatsoever with that braid, they can throw that hook. So I went with fluorocarbon this time. It's just what I like. I was using a 7-1 reel, and my 7-foot medium heavy Mustad Instinct rod was my setup. I was looking for just main lake pockets, flat looking pockets, just bare mud bank. If it had some docks in it, that was a good thing, but it didn't have to have docks. And that the whole key was to cover water. And I'm gonna tell you guys a quick story. Maybe this will teach you something, because that's the whole reason I do these recaps, is so maybe I can pass along something that you can pick up and you can use in your fishing. So the second day of practice I was there, I was in a pocket I'd never fished before on Smith Lake. I roll in there and I see a fish feeder on a boat dock. And I'm there, it's right at 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock hits, bam, that fish feeder goes off. And bluegill come up, and I see two real nice largemouth in the 3 pound class come up and start feeding right along with those bluegill. So I mark a waypoint, and I'm like, huh, that's interesting. You know, I'll keep that in mind for sure. First day of the tournament, granted 3 or 4 days have gone by. First day of the tournament, I'm running back down. I've got like an hour left to fish. I pull in there, 2:59. I swear to you guys, you can't make this up. 2:59, I pull in there. I fire right up there beside that feeder. As soon as my buzzbait hits the water, I engage my reel. Whoosh! That one of those 3 pound largemouth just flushes my buzzbait, and I weighed him in. He was like a 3 1/4. He was the biggest fish I had in my bag the first day. A critical fish, you know, as far as that goes. But that was a really cool deal, finding that feeder. And then right after I caught that, when the feeder went off, the bluegill came up and started popping and stuff. I never could catch the other fish. There was actually a run-in the back of that pocket. I went back there and culled again, which was really cool too. And that takes us to the next bait I want to talk about. Like I said, we had a lot of rain during practice, and one of the big deals on Smith Lake, or any Highland impoundment really, anytime you get a lot of runoff water with a big rain event, is run-ins in the backs of pockets. It's not as big of a deal in the fall as it is in the spring, but they'll still use any of that fresh water that's coming in the back of those pockets, because bait will get back there with that fresh water coming in, and obviously those bass will follow. Well, what I was doing to catch those fish is just throwing a shaky head. That's an 1/8 ounce homemade shaky head. It's made by Spanker Jigs. My buddy Jeff Shelton, Coleman, Alabama, he pours it. They're hand poured. He pours them right there in his garage with a 4/0 Mustad shaky head hook. That's just a zoom trick worm, green pumpkin purple. I threw straight green pumpkin some. I don't think the color really mattered. I just wanted something that looked natural. And I got a lot of bites on that. I also caught a few off shallow docks on that. I'd skip it under those flat shallow docks. The last one in a pocket, I caught a couple of key fish like that. I was throwing that on a 610, my 610 medium Mustad Instinct rod, 10 pound vicious no fade braid, 10 pound vicious Pro Elite fluorocarbon leader, about a 10-foot leader tied with an FG knot. I have started using an FG knot. I've always been a fan of a double uni knot. But I've started using an FG knot and I'm starting to get used to it. I like it. It took me a long time to tie it. It's not easy, but I like it. But yeah, that was the setup on the shaky head. An 1/8 ounce shaky head in shallow water in the fall will dang sure get you some bites. Y'all keep that in mind, because I promise you it's lethal. Now the second day, that's what I caught my fish on the first day of the tournament. Second day of the tournament was completely different. It was 2 days after the front. It was high pressure, straight bluebird skies, not a breath of wind, and they would not bite the buzzbait. It was not happening on the buzzbait. I did not have a fish at like 10:30 that morning. So I picked up a jig. This jig's made by the same guy that makes the shaky head, Spanker Jigs. He calls this one Natural Craw, I think. It's kind of a green pumpkin, almost watermelon. It's a real natural looking color. Then it's got a kind of a dull orange. It's about as close to a crawdad as you can get. And I was putting the Berkeley Max scent, I think they call that the, whatever chunk they call, the Max scent meaty chunk maybe, I think is what they call that. And I was trimming that chunk up just a little bit. If you can see right here, I was just taking my scissors and just trimming some off of that chunk just to take some of the profile off of that. That's a 3/8 ounce jig, and I just didn't want that great big trailer on there. I didn't want it to fall as slow, so I just trimmed it up a little bit with some scissors. But that's about as close to a crawdad, and what keyed me in on that, after the first day I had some crawfish in my live well, so I rigged that up, and I ended up weighing in every single fish on day 2 on that little jig right there. When I'd come up to a shallow tree, I'd flip it in there, caught several of them like that, and I actually caught some just going down the bank, just casting that jig. That jig's made with a mustad hook. I'll show you guys that hook. It's a really cool bend. It's like an O'Shaughnessy bend hook, and it's just perfect for a casting jig. I was throwing it on some brand new line from Vicious. It's 19-pound Vicious Tora fluorocarbon. It's a real high-end fluorocarbon, and that 19-pound is actually the same diameter as like a 14-pound in most fluorocarbons. So that's pretty cool. I'm really impressed with that line so far. So that's what I caught my fish on day 2. Just a little 3/8 ounce casting jig, and I'd throw it under docks if I came to a dock, just going down the bank with it. And I caught my limit on it. This is where I think I went wrong. So let's talk about where I think I went wrong on day number 2. I caught my limit from about 10:30 till about 12:30. I threw that jig, locked it in my hand for about 2 hours, and I caught my limit on that jig. And I was wrestling in my mind. I was like, I didn't have to be in until 4:10 in the afternoon. And I thought, do I go and stick with the buzzbait for 4 hours and try to get one more big bite, or do I stay right here and keep throwing this jig? And this is where tournament fishing is all about decisions, guys. That's what it's all about. That's what separates the winner from the one that sucks in last place. I mean, that's just the honest truth of it. And I decided to go through the buzzbait, and I should have stayed with the jig. I left fish to try to go find a big fish because I was catching just 15.5-inch, 16-inch keepers on the jig. But I think if I would have stayed in there all day and stuck with it, I probably could have culled up enough to make a top 10. But as tournament fishing, you live, you learn, and there's always the next tournament. I'll be headed to Grand Lake next week for the last Bassmaster Central Open on Grand. I've never fished there in the fall, so looking forward to that one, something new. And I'm in second, which it doesn't really matter, but it'd be cool to put on my resume. I'm second in points in the Central Open standings right now. I've actually won 2 Bassmaster Opens AOYs in my career so far, so it'd be cool to make that 3-time. So, you know, that's in the back of my mind. Don't get anything for it. Don't even get a trophy for it, but it would be cool to win it. So, y'all stay tuned. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for following along. I'm going to try to do some fishing here in the next couple days, pop up a fishing video in the next couple days, and then we'll get ready to head to Grand, and I'll let keep y'all filled in on that. But thank you for watching. I'll see you next time right here, Real Talk in the Shop.